Coming back, what we were saying about you started validating it. You read Eric Ries's book, and then you put together a landing page just to see if there was going to be enough interest in remote asynchronous interior design, basically.
That was exactly it. Wait, it was very simple, like almost dumb. It was like, if you are an interior designer, give me your name, email, and tell me something. Why you like? Who are you? And it was very open, and people would write a lot on these. It was funny. And for the person, it was like, what's your name, email, and what room do you want to do? And that was it. And we would, because of this silly award that we were participating, there was significant traffic. We got like 100 architects to give us info, and maybe like 80 or 90 people that were interested in buying it. We're like, okay, that's interesting. We would call all these people with different questions, right? We were trying to learn something. And for the architect and interior designer, it was, all right, uh, who are you? Like, we would assume that these people would be younger folks, but it was more established people, like on their 40s, and we would assume it was just going to be students, in college or something like that, because it was the idea was for it to be cheap. And we were asking how much would you charge for X, Y, and Z, for like a room, or for a living room, or for a
That's
bedroom.
funny.
Uh huh.
And so it's interesting to go like sometimes how much like we're so forced into our own biases, right? You wanted to do something affordable because you wanted to do a problem for yourself. Once you then realize, right, that you actually might have stumbled into, you get into this point of no return, but maybe there's a bigger opportunity there, right?
Yeah, that was it. And then same thing for people. And a lot of our assumptions were broken, but we were trying to find some middle ground. Like, we would ask an interior designer, how much do you want for a bathroom? Maybe he would say 5 grand. And then we asked the person that was trying to buy it, how much would you want to pay for this project? And they would say 500, right? So, all right, we need to find somewhere in between here. And what do you expect from this? How deep this project is gonna go? That was a big question for us. Like, are we gonna do electric projects? Are we gonna do plumbing? Are we just gonna do furniture? Like, how much are we allowed to do? We got in a lot of trouble with the associations, because we were not supposed to do a lot of the stuff that we were doing early on. And like, oh, you guys cannot do this because X, Y, and Z. Someone has to visit, and so and so. But it was enough data at the time for us to be like, all right, let's develop this thing where someone can buy a project online, give us the information. Interior designers will compete for it with drafts, and then he's going to select someone and actually develop the project.
That's great. Yeah, that's also another very important aspect I look in for founders, specifically because we invest so early at Atman with, pre-seed and seed. For the most part, we do some stuff as well a later stage, but the bulk of what we do is super early. And uh, we're not going to have the time to validate all the premises ourselves as investors, right? We need to trust that we're partnering with a founder that, number one, is just very curious, very humble, and aggressive, and knows how to learn fast and iterate. So oftentimes something I find myself repeating to founders over and over in the past 7-8 years as a professional investor is like, look, you don't know what you don't know, but like, what have you done in order to validate, right? And are you paying attention, or are you distracted, right? Because in the end, this award was great for you because it brought traffic to your company, and it validated the fact that you had to really have a more solid business model, and that the opportunity might be bigger with more financial upside than what you're looking for. Fuck the award, right? Like, you're actually thinking about the business, but it's just a channel for you to understand what's happening. I think that's very important.
Yeah, that was exactly it. And fast forward, like, this was a long journey with interior design projects, a long and painful one. And I would have done a lot of things different to make it work if it was today, of course, knowing what I know. But the way we built it was not ideal. And then we knew it wasn't like we were barely selling maybe 20 projects after like 2 years, right? And it was we didn't want to invest in it because the math didn't add up. Like when we eventually like we were dodging the CAC LTV question because we're like we need to make it work first, and then we're gonna find out, and then we're like okay, it costs us money to sell to a client, right? And we didn't have any investment backing us up. It was all our pocket money, right? So if we get more clients, we're gonna have more debt. So how do you even accelerate this, right? And even if we do, this is so expensive to even bring the customer in the first place. So our answer at the time was maybe we need funding because someone with money will know what to do to make this work. Maybe if we go to a big Oprah equivalent in Brazil, right, to Faustão and make an ad with this, maybe there's going to be enough people for this math to add up, and that didn't make any sense, of course, and nobody invested in us. We were on this road for a while, and then we tried to get investment, which is, everybody gave us polite answers, but the real answer was like, this startup sucks, right? And we're like, okay, we need to find a way to lower our cost of acquisition, then maybe we can figure this out. And we were persistent motherfuckers. We said we were going to fail a company together, but we were gonna go all the way for it to fail. Like, we're not gonna give up so easy.
It's good. It's important to be a persistent motherfucker.
There's a fine line between too persistent, right? For a while, I think we were maybe too persistent with something that we needed change, but we were always adapting. And our way out was white label, right? We're like, wait, what if we're just the engine and someone sells this because they have other interests in the information that we're working on here? And our path was, what if we sell it to retailers that sell furniture, and then they sell it at a discounted price for their clients, and then the designers can only put furniture from their website, right? And then they have the effort to sell it because it's in their best interest, and then our cost of acquisition is zero. And then whatever we make, we make. Which sounds like it makes a lot of sense. At least it made a lot of sense for us at the time. Our Excel projections were beautiful. Like, we're going to sell 20 projects this month, and then 100 next month, and then 150, and then 200, and so and so. And what made us survive too was we were almost broke like every month, but this idea made sense for the companies, at least at first. I don't know if I told you how I got into contact with Mobly, but it was a very sophisticated method of reaching out to a company. We wanted to talk to Mobly, which was a Brazilian furniture retailer that we thought was innovative enough to try something crazy like this out. And we literally tried guessing their email, the right person. So we were like, okay, marketing at Mobly, partnerships at Mobly. And then we saw LinkedIn, and we tried to figure out how their emails were put together, like John Smith at Mobly. And then we just tried a bunch of people with this idea. And then one person was like, oh, this idea sounds really cool. Can you guys come over tomorrow? And then we're like, yes!
That's great. Well,
yes!
Well, this is the important aspect about just like determination and using basic logic. There's something that I get very frustrated with just people that think that they're entitled to your time, and they don't do any effort. They're just like, hey, how are you? Can we catch up? Oh, I'd love to pick your brain. I'd love to grab coffee so I can, so you can help me resolve all my problems, blah, blah, blah. This is a very different approach than the one you took, which it's a far more respectful one. You're basically like, look, I know that the B2C aspect of Decora doesn't work. Or at least to make it work, it's going to be very tough. I need to try something new. I'm going to figure out who are these people, and then I'll try to get away. I'll try to find a way to get in touch with them by guessing the email addresses. And that's the typical type of. It's a simple problem, but you'd be surprised with the amount of people that just don't do it, right? And in the end, we all read all of our messages. We read all of our emails and all of our WhatsApps and so forth. But the amount of cold messages that we usually receive that are terrible is super high. So it's just interesting how it works when you take a little bit of time and effort to do your research and write a well-written message, right? And oftentimes it works.
And then we did most of our business just reaching out to people, right? and that was the first one out of many. But we always had the mindset, man, we cannot waste this person's time. I'm not gonna be like, I have this crazy opportunity, I need to talk to you now. I was like, this is the facts, like short and simple, and that was basically the message. Like, look, it would be really cool if you guys were to sell interior design projects. We have this product, we could just plug and play with your stuff. Does that make sense? We want to talk about it. And someone was like, yeah, that seems to make total sense. And we went there, and they were like, all right, let's do it. We're gonna do this white label tool where people are gonna buy this project, so and so. And then we had to make a ton of changes in the back end for that to work. So we went back to our 2 developers back home. Right? We have great news and scary news. Great news is we got a deal where they're gonna sell this stuff for us, which solves a big problem that we have. The bad news is we have to rewrite the whole thing pretty much. And then they're like, oh, fuck, okay, let's just do it one part at a time. We figured it out. The good thing about this whole journey with white label, the first good thing was our exposure to B2B negotiations and deals, right? We started talking to companies instead of talking to people, like consumers, right? And that was different, and we liked it. It worked. It was productive for us. We were fitting in this work, right? And then Mobley put on this press release saying, Mobley now sells interior design projects. And that was a gold mine for us, because for Mobley we did everything for free. That was our pilot. But then we took that report as a topic for every other retailer, like, hey, you should probably put this on your website too. That's us. We can just put it there anywhere. By the way, if you want to put that in, it's just one time 10 grand for us to like set it up, and then like, and then you sell it, and then I serve you. And we did those 10 grand like 6 times. We put it everywhere: Ponto Frio, Extra, Casas Bahia, Mobley. Like for them it was nothing, like for their budget, but for us it was 2 months alive. Each 10 grand.
True, 3 months of burn. Yes, it's funny. We recently recorded an episode with the founder of Anycart, Rafael, and he's is close by in here in Redwood City, Mountain View, and he said also, it's like, oh wait, if I close a special project with a retailer, I mean, he solves a completely different problem than what you guys did at Tecora, but he was like, oh, I get 2 months of burn by selling one per. Maybe I should do this more often.
Exactly. We're selling lunch to pay the rent, man. And then that was it. And the bad news was, the good news is with him, it was basic math, right? Look, if Mobley was selling about 10 projects a month, 10 to 15, which is basically what we would sell on our own, which we're still selling. So that was 30, right? And then every other retailer that we would put in would bring in another maybe 15 and 20, and then we could just start from there. If we were to get to 100, we would get decently profitable to kind of hire a few people so we could like start doing something. And maybe become a more attractive company to get investment or to actually grow, right? The thing is, Mobley was the better one because they actually cared about selling these projects. So they actually made an effort. They put it on their homepage sometimes. They would send emails to people selling them. All the other retailers were way more concerned about not lagging behind in the technology and just having the same press release than actually doing the thing. And I get it. Our offer was too much of a moonshot for retailers. If you tell a furniture retailer, man, do you want to sell a couch now, or do you want to sell a couch, a chair, and a rug 1 month from now? 9 out of 10 will pick the couch now, right? It's like this next one, let's go. And my offer would delay the clients because they will have to go through the project, which was a time-consuming effort for them to eventually decide to buy a lot of things, which they did. Like everybody that did the project, they did buy a lot of things. We would track that. Because it was in their face, like buy all these things and you're gonna do your whole living room. It was very practical, but it was too time consuming, too risky for retailers to actually invest in that. It was a bet, right? So we went from, after putting this solution inside every retailer, we went from 30 to 40 projects, maybe 45, a really good month. And then we were out of retailers to sell this stuff to. We're like, okay. On the upside, we made some money to survive. We had like 50 grand in the bank from all the setups that we did. On the bet side, this is still not profitable and it didn't make sense for our client, which was a retailer. They don't care. Nobody cares about this. We're not adding enough value to it. And then come back to that thing you said about being alert, even especially when things are shitty, right? That's when you're probably more starving for actually finding something that makes sense, like the power of broke. Like it was, I think it's Ray Diamond that says that the broker you are, the more hunger for actually finding something that makes sense. And we went to Mobley. Like this has been 3 years, maybe condensed into a short story, but it was not. We were adapting, we were changing the product, we were making things different to actually try to make it easier. At some moment, we even stopped charging, and we're like, look, if you like it, you buy it in the end, but we're gonna give you the info only. It was desperate, that much desperate. And then we're at the moment of giving up. We're like, look, fuck it, let's just. We learned a lot. We got what we wanted, right? And then we went to Mobley to try to, and Mobley's, I mentioned it a lot because they were a huge part of our story as more than clients, but partners that were open to all our crazy ideas very often, right? Until the last day we were there.
Yeah, and for the listeners that are not aware, so Mobley recently they went public in the Brazilian Stock Exchange. They're on an online furniture retailer, basically similar to Wayfair in the U.S.
Exactly, and they were very startup mode, right? They really want to try things out, and if it didn't work, it didn't matter. And we were very much sad, very much disappointed that all these years of effort were looking like it was going to be meaningless, at least financially. And then we're in Mobley, and we're talking to this other guy that has nothing to do with the meeting we're going to take. It was before it, like in the coffee room. And if I'm not wrong, he was something like a category manager of a certain category of products. And he shared his pain. He was like, look, he just felt like sharing. I don't know. Maybe it was God. Like, tell these guys this thing. I don't know. He said, I have this problem. And that's when my ears perked up immediately, right? Tell me about your problem, which I'm desperate to solve a problem that somebody cares about. And I have this problem where I'm bringing these products from China, which are a big bet for us. But it's going to take forever for us to actually photograph the thing because they have to come from China to here. And then we're going to have to send it to a studio. And so these photos are expensive. They take forever. I'm going to lose like 60 days of selling this product, which I can start selling now if they could just come from China like as sales. And I looked at Gustavo, our co-founder, like, we were thinking the same thing. Like, look, what if we did it with CGI? Our thought was, some interior designers, they did really realistic stuff. So others don't, but some few did some really good looking stuff. And our thought was maybe we can do this with computer-generated imagery, right? Which was something that some retailers were already doing very manually. And he was like, okay, cool. That sounds like it makes sense. You guys do that? I'm like, yeah, we do that, man. That's our bread and butter. We do it every day.
Bread and butter.
Yeah, no, it's funny. So you realize, I can now provide through CGI a working capital solution for all these retailers. So before you even buy inventory, sell it and put it on CGI through the Cora.
Look, because it has to, especially from these retailers that bring stuff from China, or Asia, which is pretty much everyone, it's gonna come from Asia anyway. So instead of waiting for it to come and then studio and then assemble, photograph, so and so, let's just do the CGI and start selling day one, which was our gigantic differential offer. Like, it was just not wasting time.
Yeah.
In the end, 80% of all startups in Latin America are fintechs. Directly or indirectly. Somehow there's always a fintech component, even if it's completely indirectly. But that's great though. So you've had the, let's call it the CGI realization, right? The moment where you're like, oh, now I can actually have a very clear value proposition on how to, move inventory for, in a sophisticated way.
We had the first profitable month with this project. So I called the designer, got her price, put a 2x on top of it, told the guy later, is this price good for you? He's like, yes, sir, it looks great. And I'm like, fuck yes.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I was gonna ask you, like, how did you price this solution?
Very sophisticated.
And I think it's yeah, no, it's just you're just like, yeah, how much is it gonna cost for it? Double it. Then let's see if they pay for it. But it's funny, in the early days of SendGrid, I remember when we were debating about how are we gonna price the product, and you know what? I think most people that say that they are pricing specialists, or I think in later stages it's certainly true, but in the early days, you are guessing, and you try as high as you can and see if that person, if your customer on the other side is going to be comfortable with that price. So I appreciate the sincerity here. And then, in the end, I assumed that over time that got more sophisticated and you guys found like a different model or figured out like a way to, make even more money.
Yeah. As it grew, what was the real challenge wasn't figuring out that, all right, retailers need CGI. That was a great realization, which led to a big deal with Mobily, which became a recurring client. So we went from, say in dollars, like $5,000 MRR to 50 in a month, right? Which was a gigantic step for us with only one client. The challenging part was, all right, they want this in high volume. There was no one in the planet Earth doing CGI in high volume because it's freaking challenging. It's very complicated, right? Really, as in there are many software options, there are many ways to do the same thing. It was really hard to scale. And there was not enough patterns developed. Like people were just doing how they felt they should do it. There was no default mode of doing it, and there was two elements of it. At the same time, it was rarely the same person doing the thing end to end. A lot like programming, CGI has layers, right? So there's the guy that does the 3D modeling itself. There's the guy that's good at making the image realistic, and then there's the guy that does the post-production that actually works the image like in the detail. And depending on what the job is, there's the guy that animates the thing, which is a totally different like aspect of it. Right? So that's why the studios worldwide were very much boutiques, right? They were doing very expensive stuff, doing with very talented people, but they were doing it at a very high cost and a very low values. Our idea was, how do we flip this? How do we make this as cheap as possible so we can do high volume and actually make this price affordable for retailers? Because they're not going to be happy doing 50 or 100 products. They want to do 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. So I cannot charge them $2,000 for a product, which was the price in the market. We didn't know. We learned later. It was very much. We thought we were killing it, but we were being like half the price of what he was expecting, right? And
yeah. I am confident the next time you for your next company you want to price something, you will make a few phone calls.
I'll do it. I'll do so many things better. You have no idea. But that's how it went. So the challenge was, even with Mobily, we were getting our ass kicked just to support Mobily, our first client. It was a whale for us. And we called in a bunch of 3D artists to actually teach us like how it was. We didn't know the first thing about 3D modeling. And we're like, all right, we needed a masterclass. We call it, all right, what are the softwares? How do you work on it? What are the files, extensions, like technicals? How do you do it? Show me how you do it. And when, how do you make it faster? Who is the best person in the market? What does he do different? We went in a deep dive in 3D modeling, and all of them said we were crazy for trying to do what we wanted to do. But that was expected. We're like, right, that's the expected part. Of course, he doesn't want to think this is possible.
Always a good sign, I think. You just have to have the right amount of craziness, both individually and as a collective. I don't like to invest in normal people. Normal people don't build exceptional things.
So what we did was we took a lot of what we learned from selling interior design projects, and we're like, look, for this to be cheaper, we need to crowdsource it. We need to find the countries where this is cheaper and there's more people doing it. and then we need to break this into a bunch of small jobs and actually manage everybody. So we built a new platform where we would find 3D artists, we would distribute jobs, we would have this QA layer where people within our office would check their work and give feedback and actually make it good enough to get to the client. And that's how we went for a long time.
That's great. Yeah, it's the aspect of, you know, a bunch of roads of trials and so forth, and then